Hi, it's Nick here at MedTech World. I'm fortunate to have Alira Health's Ainoa Gómez. How you doing?
Very good, thank you.
You're basically at the regulation end, expertise in regulation. Here we are, south of Europe. Um, what's happening in Europe? Something changing?
Yeah, actually, yes. The situation in Europe right now it's quite interesting, I would say, because we are abiding by some regulations for the MDR, the IVDR for medical devices and in vitro diagnostics. But even if they've been published for some years, um, the goal these regulations had that were to harmonize, no, unify the European framework. What we are seeing now is that they are still creating a lot of burden, particularly for uh, low risk products, or small companies that they don't know 100% how to manage it. And it's interesting because in September the European Union asked for a call to get feedback from the industry stakeholders about reforms of the MDR and IVDR. And it's interesting because there was a lot of feedback, like hundreds of comments from the industry, and more or less all of them conveyed into the same kind of message: lack of transparency, lack of harmonization, burdensome procedures, administrative issues. And it was interesting to see that from a lot of different parts of the industry, the messages were, conveying.
They asked for the feedback and now they have it.
Yeah.
Will they listen?
The idea, yes, is that there will be some reforms, but I think it's important to have in mind that even with the reforms, the regulations are not going away. So I don't think that companies will need to, okay, let's wait to see what happens. I don't think that's the right approach. I think that, yeah, it will be interesting to see in which actions will take place. But I think that companies need to realize that even with the reforms, the regulations are here to stay. So I think it's important that they are taken into consideration from early stage of the development, because they will define the whole path forward, right? And not only from a regulatory compliance perspective, we are also seeing more and more that in terms of investors, for example, like it's being a differentiator, regulatory readiness, regulatory mapping. Do you have your pathway to the market clear from a regulatory standpoint? So this is being a differentiator. So I think it's important that companies find a balance between, okay, how do we navigate all these regulations, all these guidances, all these positions, all these reforms, if there are, right? With implementing the regulations as soon as possible, right? And that's where we can help.
Oh, yeah, they've got the expertise to do so. Here in Europe, and I guess your regulatory experience is transcontinental.
Exactly. For the U.S. as well. For the U.S., there are other kind of problems, I would say, or complications, definitely. Or we are seeing a lot of changes now as well. For example, in terms of the supply chain, right? Because of the geopolitical issues, right? So we are seeing now that in terms of the supply chain, for example, there are changes in the way it is being approached, because you need to assess vulnerability of the supply chain of the suppliers of a company, for example. No, like, how do you evaluate it? It's not only just the concept of annual audit. I think that is shaping as well. It's evolving, and it's moving towards a continuous surveillance, let's say, right? It's doing quarterly check-ins, but not just for compliance. No, let's check financial health, let's check regulatory compliance, let's check not only the first tier of the supply chain, but let's go beyond. No, so I think that's something. I mean, just an example, right, of what we are seeing in the U.S. as well.
Cool. It's something that Alira, I guess, provides is that continuous service
Yeah.
throughout that cycle. Something I was hoping to ask you about, sort of the expertise. so much AI everywhere. I'm seeing in other sectors AI being used in a compliance end.
Okay.
In this sector here, how has it been utilized? Is it probably one of the foremost sectors in which it's utilized?
Yeah, this is an interesting question because we are seeing more and more the impact of AI in compliance. We started to see it in the regulatory framework, of course, right? Like, well, we have like several angles, I would say. One of the angles is the regulatory hurdle of AI from the development perspective, right? Like, medical device software or devices with software component, like changing the mindset on what is going on with the regulatory framework. And I think that part creates or has created more a hurdle than helping at the moment, right? In the situation I think we are in. But in terms of compliance, I think the message is a little bit different because I think that what we are seeing with AI in compliance is that it's allowing us to build scalable models, scalable systems that are not only just allowing us to be, more efficient, or they are not just allowing us to be, just compliance or just be, checking the boxes. I think we are seeing that AI is allowing us to use really the data that we have as a platform. And you asked me before, like, okay, US, Europe. Well, I think that the use of AI in compliance will also help us towards this goal. Yeah, exactly, because it will allow us to make sure that we have a platform that can sustain both regions in terms of evidence generation, because we will have a system that will be able to track or to predict and not only just provide one way compliance. It will be able to infer our pre-market assumptions with, for example, the post-market evidences and post-market trends that we might identify. I don't know, for example, from a post-market clinical follow-up perspective, right? Identifying some trends that will continuously impact the clinical evaluation, for example, or being able to correlate complaints with design risks that we scoped at the beginning. So I think that the AI in compliance, it's gonna enable the
Some
compliance
aspects, at
itself.
least.
Yeah, exactly. More than putting some kind of barriers. But still, I think it's in a pilot phase, and I think it's wise as well to understand how to adapt it step by step, no?
Alina, thank you for sharing your thoughts with us and your thought leadership.
Thank you so
From
much.
Alira Healthcare.
Thank you.
Nicholas signing off from MedTech World.